Several of you wrote on your class exit tickets last weekend that you would love to see some concrete examples and some ideas for how to assess learners. So I'm going to share with you some ways that I used both in level 2 and in level 5 when I was working at adult ed. Let's start with level 2. Our unit was on community resources, community locations, and the students had been practicing giving directions. How do you get to the bank? How do you get to the hospital? That kind of thing. And what I noticed was they had a really difficult time using the correct pronunciation for the streets that were numbers, like First Avenue, Second Avenue, that kind of thing. So I created a 2-hour lesson to work with these ordinal numbers and then a review. So day 1, shit, god damn it, why do you... Several of you remarked on your class exit tickets last weekend that you would love to see some examples and ideas of how to assess learners. So I'm going to share with you some ideas, some techniques that I've used in level 2 and in level 5. Let's start with level 2. We were practicing a unit on community resources, and the students' dialogue involved giving directions. How do you get to the bank? How do you get to the hospital? That kind of thing. And what I noticed was they had very poor concept of what those numbered street names really stood for. So for example, 3rd Avenue came out as 3RD Avenue. So I created a 2-hour lesson to work with those ordinal numbers and then brought those back in subsequent lessons after this. It involved a manipulative activity and some pronunciation practice, and then there was certainly guided practice. There was some independent practice with line dialogue, and we did some ball toss, and there were both informal and some formative assessments, and then real life applications and transfer. On day 2, we were ready to continue the unit and giving directions to people, but we needed to review those ordinal numbers. And there was always the possibility that somebody would come to class tomorrow who was not in today's class and to get all of this information. So here's what we did. First, there was the direct instruction, and this was a skeleton outline. This was a very scaffolded activity. So as we came to each of the parts that you see underlined, this is where the students were supposed to write. And so I would write on the board so they could copy, and the students who were a little higher simply were able to write from the dictation. So I had to first tell them what is the difference between an ordinal number and a cardinal number. That's very academic language, but at level 2, they need to be developing that academic language. We use ordinal numbers to identify one thing in a sequence. We use them for dates. We use them for street names. And so there were examples of those. But for this lesson, we were only going to practice the ordinals from 1 to 10 using colors. So this lesson served a dual purpose of having them retrieve and review the names of colors. The supplies you need are this worksheet, and I'm going to post this in the student resources in D2L for you, so you will have this activity. This is the worksheet. For supplies, you need scissors, you need glue or tape, and you need colored markers or pencils. You need 9 colors. You need red, blue, yellow, green, pink, purple, orange, black, and brown. And then having local street maps. We used to be able to get these out of the phone book and run copies off. But you can also get local street maps from the Chamber of Commerce. You need a bean bag and you need tissues. Everybody gets this worksheet and they get the colored markers. Their instructions are to color 9 of the circles. And it doesn't matter what sequence they're coloring, just this is little busy work, and they can sit there and they can color the 9 circles and they leave 1 circle white. When they've completed the coloring, then they cut the circles apart. And this is the next worksheet, and this is reduced down so it will fit on the slide. You can see I've got the words and I've got the numeric representation of these ordinal numbers. It's kind of a skeleton outline. The first thing we're going to do is work with those colored circles, which now are going to be balls. And I start dictating the information to them, and they start moving their colored circles into place. So I say the first ball is red, and all they have to do is move that red circle to that left margin. The second ball is blue, the third ball is green, and so on. And I can repeat this as many times as everybody needs until everybody's got their circles in the right sequence. Then they can glue or tape them into place. Now it's time to work with the written version of these colors, and this helps them review. This is remembering. And so we go through these and we do this together as a group. The first ball is red, the second ball is blue. Students tell me the colors, we write them, I help them with the spelling. And once they have completed this, now they have their worksheet for the rest of the lesson. The guided practice includes choral repetition, including the expression, tell me about the. Tell me about the first ball. Tell me about the second ball. We also need to do some pronunciation practice with those ordinals that end with th. Fifth, sixth, seventh. So we do that practice with tissues, and it's a lot of fun. Once we have done that, then it's time for pairs to practice, and they can do this for about 10-15 minutes, practicing with a partner, listening to each other's pronunciation, practicing those ordinal numbers. Then it's a random bean bag toss or a ball toss. Jose, tell me about the fourth ball. Maria, tell me about the sixth ball, that sort of thing. That's all my informal and formative assessment. Now they're ready for independent practice, and that would be a line dialogue where they'll line up and they will practice that sentence, tell me about the. Tell me about the sixth ball. Tell me about the 10th ball. And they'll do that in a line dialogue for maybe another 10 minutes. Now we go into some real life application and some extension, which will be their homework. To show them, to remind them, they already know the names of the 10s, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So now it's a simple process of showing them that when you combine that number, that name, 20, with that ordinal, 21st, now I have the ordinal for the number 21, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And that goes fairly quickly because this is review, and now they're also tying it together with what we did today. Then we take out the maps and we find numbered streets, and they practice saying them. We can do this as a group. They can do this in as partners in pairs. And we can ask students who lives on a street with a number name and ask them to name their street. Their homework is going to be now, when they are driving home, when they are driving around town, to say out loud the name of any numbered street that they see. And they'll see them as numbers, and they can sometimes also see them written out as words. Day 2, it's time for review. And I created these review sheets with all of the applications. The first application is dates, using ordinals for dates. The second application is using ordinals to identify one thing in a sequence. And then here is a matching exercise for them to match the numeric form with the written form, and then to write it as a date. That's level 2. Notice that in this worksheet, there's a lot of white space. I highly recommend this. Don't overload your worksheets with huge amounts of text, especially for beginning students. Leave a lot of white space so they don't get lost on the page. For new students, I created a cheat sheet. So they would come in, they would get a binder, they would get one of these. And from now on, when we practice this construct, when we use ordinal numbers, Anybody who came into the class late, or maybe who wasn't at the previous lesson, they have this little cheat sheet and they can come up to speed. For level 5, we're really trying to get students to learn how to identify their own errors, right? And to self-assess. And one way you can do this is with checklists. We've talked about these many times. Here's a checklist for writing that I asked level 5 to use. We did a narrative reading in a civics lesson on the first Thanksgiving, and this was a review quiz the next day. Notice how much more complicated and challenging this is at level 5. And this could be a summative assessment. I could grade these on accuracy. But another thing you can do is create word puzzles. Here's a word search for the Thanksgiving lesson. Here's a crossword puzzle created with all of the vocabulary from a unit on shopping and getting out of debt and getting credit and that type of thing. So there's no reason that assessment can't be fun. These two puzzles, the word search and the crossword puzzle, were both created at the Discovery Education site, the free puzzle maker. There's the website. As you develop your assessments, keep them on file. They become part of your toolkit. Always make note of what worked and what didn't, and maybe what needs to be changed. That's part of being a reflective teacher. But be creative. It's okay for it to be fun, and they won't even know they're being assessed. I hope that helps. Bye-bye.